Hi there. In this short topic video, we're going to introduce you to the main causes of cash flow problems. Now, there are lots of different reasons why a business will suffer from cash flow problems, and we'll take you through the key features of each of these over the next few minutes. Essentially, though, most cash flow problems arise from a business that has poor profitability, and in particular, if it's incurring losses. So actually the starting point for solving a cash flow problem is to look at the costs of the business and try and find ways of reducing that and reducing losses. But as we'll see, there are lots of other reasons why a cash flow problem may arise other than a loss-making business. Let's start though with that key point. Losses are the most important cause of cash flow problems for a business, particularly over the medium to long term. A loss-making business by definition has got more outgoings than incomings in terms of cash flow, and it will almost certainly run out of cash in the medium to long term unless it's able and proves able to have a viable business. However, there are other reasons why cash flow problems arise, particularly in the short term. One of these is that a business can spend too much on capital spending, in particular on the productive capacity of the business. In a way, it's like over expanding or expanding too rapidly before the demand flows in and the sales start to flow. So for example, it may well be that you've introduced a new production line or expanded into new premises or added production capacity, but the sales have not yet arisen. And one of the issues is that if that finance is the wrong kind of finance to finance the capacity, this can create some short-term issues, particularly if they've used a short-term source of finance such as a bank overdraft. The problem for a business that have spent too much on capacity is that fixed assets are hard to turn back into cash in the short term. Another reason why a business can suffer cash flow problems is when it invests in holding too much stocks or inventories, as they're otherwise known. If you're holding excess stocks, that effectively ties up cash in what's known as working capital. Holding too much stock in the warehouse, too much stock in the stores. You've had to pay for that stock, but you've not yet sold it. And of course, as you hold too much stock, there's an increased risk that some of that inventory or stock becomes obsolete or falls in value. Now, of course, as we've seen with our videos on stock management, there's a trade-off here. You need to make sure you hold enough stock to meet demand. And also it may well be that you can benefit from bulk buying in order to reduce the unit cost of each item of stock. However, in general, to manage cash flow better, it's more important to try and minimize the amount of stock that you hold. Another reason why cash flow problems arise is that you allow customers to take too much credit, and in particular to take too long to pay you back. You remember that customers who buy on credit are known as trade debtors or trade receivables. And of course, in many industries, it's normal practice to allow customers to buy on credit, to receive the goods and services, and then to pay some time later, for example 30 or 45 days later. But in business, late payment by your customers is a significant and common problem, particularly for smaller businesses. And of course, the longer you leave those debts outstanding, the more likely it is that the customer will not be able to pay. Another reason is a concept called overtrading. What do we mean by overtrading? Well, this is similar to the idea of investing too much in capacity, but it can be more than that. Overtrading arises where a business expands too quickly, and a key issue is that this places pressure on the short-term financial sources of the business. Imagine you're a retail chain who wants to open as many new stores as possible. Perhaps you found a format that works, and how quickly can you get that format out into the shopping centres? Well, one of the issues is you'll have to pay rent in advance to the landlords, you'll have to pay the shop fitters to fit the stores out, and of course then you'll have to recruit the staff and fill the stores with stock. And before you know it, you've spent lots of outgoings, but there are no sales yet. And therefore, that creates a short-term cash outflow, a short-term pressure on cash flow. Many retail firms have come unstuck by opening too many stores, in other words, by overtrading before the sales have started to flow in. Another risk of overtrading is that you rely on long-term contracts that aren't particularly advantageous from a cash flow point of view, where the profit arises later in the contract, but the business has to spend significantly in the early stages of the contract in order to be able to complete the contract. So look out for overtrading as a cause of cash flow problems, a business that is expanding too quickly. And another reason, although this is probably easier to manage if you know when it's coming, another reason for cash flow problems is when demand is highly seasonal. There's a picture there of a chocolate Easter egg manufacturer, and you can imagine that, well, we know, don't we, that demand for Easter eggs is a highly seasonal product. But where there is significant seasonal differences in demand, that can create cash flow problems, particularly if you don't plan for them. So, for example, in the case of the Easter egg manufacturer, you've clearly got to make the stock and get it into the stores before customers start to demand it. So there's a significant requirement to invest in production and inventory buildup before the cash flows arise. There we go, guys. That's been a brief introduction to the main causes of cash flow problems.